So here is a brand new piece of writing. This is for a project that is going to be starting probably mid-April. I'm really excited about it. I'm not gonna give away too much, but I'm just gonna read the opening sequence. Haven't had a title for it yet, and I'm not even gonna tell you what it's about. I'm gonna leave that till the end. Michael didn't know how long the phone had been ringing when he picked it up and answered with a groggy hello. The man in the bed next to him had slept through it, but that didn't surprise him. Michael had crushed up 3 Xanax into his wine the night before to ensure that he fell asleep quickly afterward. He just wanted the sex, not conversation. He got all the conversation he wanted and more from his partner when he was around, which was rarely. But when he was, all he wanted to do was talk about their relationship. They had become an old married couple, and Michael resented the hell out of him. They had fought so hard to get married, to be allowed to be married for fuck's sake. And now all Michael wanted was a divorce. It was almost embarrassing. The call was from his answering service. They had been trying to get a hold of him on his cell phone for hours, but got no answer. Shit, he muttered and fumbled for his pants. Hang on. He dug in his pocket for his cell phone, which was dead, and turned on an antique lamp, a birthday gift from Ray, to look for his charger. What is it? He asked the operator, whose utter lack of emotion betrayed nothing of the urgency of the call. I've got a message, several of them actually, for you to call Dr. Chandra immediately. That's it? He asked. They didn't give me any other message, doctor, she replied. Do you have the number? Yes, thank you, he sighed, and hung up the phone. Chandra. Just the mention of her name tied a knot in his stomach. If she was calling him at, Jesus, it was only 4:30, then it wasn't good news. Dr. Chandra and he had worked very hard to keep their little project a secret. If their work was successful, they'd both be up for the Nobel Prize. If not, well, omelets and eggs, Michael figured. His cell phone lit up, showing 10 missed calls and 3 messages. He was about to listen to them when someone started pounding on his front door. He pulled on his pants and went down to open it. What is it, Navina? He asked, opening the door both annoyed and worried. The woman standing in his open door was pale and trembling. Her lips were twitching as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. Her face reminded him of an unraveled sweater, and just the thought of that made him shiver at a distant memory that he couldn't quite place. But it wasn't the look on her face that worried him, rather the smears of what could only be blood on the sleeves of her scrubs. Navina? He asked more gently this time. She snapped back to life, it seemed, her eyes angry and wild. Where have you been, Michael? She hissed, and pressed past him, closing the door behind her. I've been calling you for hours. She was clearly frightened, though her voice was the same melodic sing-song it always was, the product of British schools and the affluence of New Delhi. She'd spent her years at Oxford trying to disguise her roots by adopting a posher more English lilt to her voice, but in her anger she fell back to her true origins, and her voice took on a character that Michael could not find intimidating in the least. Yes, sorry, my cell phone died, Michael said, his head still a bit dull around the edges from the wine. Are you okay? She didn't answer him, but frantically made her way to his kitchen and pulled a stemless Riedel glass from the cupboard and reached for a bottle of wine that was still open on the counter. Don't, Michael warned, running a hand over his face. Don't drink that one. She surprised him by smashing the glass on the floor and screaming, a sick, wordless growl. Upstairs, Michael's lover stirred. Is Raymond here? Dr. Chandra whispered. Michael shook his head and hung his head in shame. You fucking asshole, she sneered. Get dressed, now, and get rid of him. We need to talk privately. Are you hurt? Michael asked, motioning to the blood on her sleeve. This is not my blood, Michael, she said. Get dressed. Get up, Michael began, and then realized he couldn't remember the guy's name. He also didn't remember him mentioning that he snored when he picked him up at the club the night before, but then there was so much left unsaid and talk was overrated. Get up, he repeated, and threw a pair of designer jeans that cost as much as his phone at the heavily tattooed stranger in his, and Ray's, bed. The fuck, man? He groaned, and buried his head in a pillow. I need you to leave. I have an emergency, and you can't be here, Michael insisted, slowly losing his patience. What time is it? 1:15. I need you to go, Michael said. You can't be here. What, you got someone else coming by? He laughed and yawned. Dr. Chandra called up the stairs. Are you coming, Michael? The man in the bed sat up, startled at the woman's voice. You're married? Michael fumbled for what to say. Well, yes, but... You're straight? No. Michael laughed at the idea. No, definitely not. Look, you just have to go. I have an emergency and I need to go. I have to go. Okay, sweetie, no need to be all aggro, he said, reaching out to tussle Michael's hair like a child, and then trailed his hand down Michael's bare chest toward his hastily thrown-on jeans. Michael reached out and caught his hand before he could go any further. Listen, this was fun, but I'm a doctor, and I have an emergency, and I've got to go, he said firmly, stressing the last 3 words. And so you have to go. Doctor, huh? He mused. So you think I can get some more of those pills from last night? They made me feel all warm and fuzzy. Michael pulled away from the man, whose name still hadn't come to him, found his shirt and threw it to him. Then he opened the drawer of his side table and pulled out a prescription bottle of Xanax made out to Raymond Semple and tossed it to the man. I need you gone in 5, he insisted. Sure, no problem, he said, inspecting the bottle. Hey, I thought you said your name was Mike. Michael said nothing, but threw on a shirt of Ray's, feeling both comforted and ashamed at the smell of his partner, the first and only man he'd ever really loved. I really need you to leave, he repeated. Dr. Chandra had swept up the glass in the kitchen and put a kettle on for tea, another comfort from home, deciding that she wasn't in the mood for wine after all. She was standing at the sink when Michael and the still nameless man came down the stairs, Michael looking old and ashamed, the younger man looking vibrant, alive, and utterly incapable of being embarrassed. Still, Michael gave the man a kiss goodbye, then closed the door and locked it, collapsing against it and fighting back tears. Well, you sure know how to pick them, came a chiding voice from the kitchen. It was a mistake, Michael whined. Don't you judge me, Navina. Not at all, she said. He was a fine specimen. Tell me, has she started shaving yet? Michael ignored her. Disarming voice or no, her tongue was as sharp and concise as a scalpel, which she wielded with unequaled skill. Sorry. Why are you here? He asked. I've been trying to call you for hours when the alarm was first raised a little after midnight, she replied. When it was too late for you to be of assistance, I gave up trying to reach you and instead came here. To be honest, I was worried that you had something to do with it, that maybe you'd, what is that charming phrase, bollocksed it up and then done a runner. What are you talking about? What's gone wrong? Is it Ward C? A slight but perceptible tremor had crept into Michael's voice. Navina nodded and sipped her tea, holding the cup with both hands to stop it from shaking. What happened? He asked, steadying himself as his legs suddenly threatened to stop supporting him. They're dead, she answered, her voice calm and quiet, not at all the shriek of disbelief it had been just hours earlier. Michael swooned and licked his lips. Sit down, Michael. You look like you're going to faint. Navina offered him a stool from around the island that Michael and Ray often enjoyed morning coffee at. Thank you, he managed and sat, sighing. Tell me what happened. I don't know, she said. That's the problem. Nobody does. What do you mean nobody does? He asked in disbelief. Surely someone saw something. What about the security cameras? Dr. Chandra shook her head. Some sort of interference has corrupted the footage. I've backed up what there is for analysis, but I'm telling you, it's bits and pieces at best. Fuck, Michael spat, and then looked again at the blood on Navina's scrubs. It's a mess, Michael, she said, noticing him staring. They're unrecognizable. What do you mean? It's inhuman, she said. Whatever did this to them, it got in there and back out without anyone seeing a goddamn thing. She produced her phone and showed Michael a short video of the scene. After a few seconds, Michael pushed it away and turned and retched into the sink and turned the faucet on and ran cold water over his head. Navina put her phone away. Are you okay? Michael turned the faucet off. Hand me a dish towel, would you? The drawer beside the fridge. Drying off his hair and spitting red wine vomit into the sink, he shook his head as if by denying what he had just seen, he could deny the truth of it. No, he said. No. That's not possible. She's crazy. Of course she is, Dr. Chandra agreed. And yet... How many dead? All but one, she said. But she's not talking. Nearly catatonic, really. Hasn't said anything. At least, Not anything that made any sense. She just keeps saying the name Helena over and over again. Who's Helena? Michael asked. There's no one by that name in Ward C. No, I know. Could this Helena be responsible for this? Michael asked, knowing it was the wrong question to be asking. Dr. Chandra shook her head. I think you know what is responsible. I think you knew all along this could happen, Doctor. Michael glared at her darkly. Impossible. She's delusional. Paranoid schizophrenic. She's never been diagnosed as such, and her response to all our neuroleptic cocktails has been inconsistent with that assumption. It certainly hasn't stopped her delusions. She said something like this would happen. She's a liar, and crazy to boot, Michael insisted. But no matter, she's dead now, and this has nothing to do with her. Dr. Chandra shook her head slowly. No, Michael whispered, and grabbed the counter to stop himself from collapsing. The one survivor? Dr. Chandra nodded, her eyes wide and frightened. Belle, she said. Jessica Bell is the only survivor. Anyway, so that's the opening to sequel to Jessica, the collaborative sort of metafictional story that myself and 6 other writers told back in October. And I've come up with this idea that blows that one out of the water, and I'm not gonna ruin it for you. But I'm really excited, and I'm really looking forward to working with a new set of writers. I'll let you know who a little bit later on. This is really just the first time I've mentioned this publicly. So I hope you stick around and enjoy.